After 2 decades of boom and bust, a new, unprecedented challenge. The deadliest conflict in history. A threat to our way of life, to our very existence. More than any time in our history, Canadians come together, working and fighting for a common cause. United at war. We are explorers, risk-takers, and dreamers, fighting the odds in a land of extremes. Across a vast continent, we build a nation. Truly strong and free. Spring 1940. Adolf Hitler's Germany has already swallowed up Austria, Czechoslovakia, and Poland. Now, the rest of Europe is in his sights. Desperate for help, our allies turn to Canada. Fort William, Ontario, known today as Thunder Bay. Hundreds of workers are building new fighter planes for the British.
The Canadian war effort involved everyone. On the home front, Canadians, like in the First World War, banded behind the overseas forces. We were playing an absolutely crucial role.
One Canadian doing all she can for the war effort. This factory's chief engineer, Elsie McGill.
Elsie was the very first female aeronautical engineer and aircraft designer in the world.
McGill has retooled this plant to manufacture the Hawker Hurricane.
Line your corners.
One of the most advanced fighter planes in the world. Great Britain must bolster its air force or face Nazi invasion. They've ordered 40 Canadian-made Hurricanes to be delivered by the end of the year.
In the production of Hurricanes, the demand was real and it was immediate. And if they didn't get produced, the war could be lost. So she was under great pressure.
Stricken with polio at 24, doctors said Elsie McGill would never walk again. She survives to become the first Canadian woman to earn a degree in electrical engineering. At just 35, she's at the top of an industry dominated by men.
Electrical updated you on that, correct?
Elsie McGill, she felt she was doing something for the war effort. And maybe because of being a woman and maybe because of the polio, she really was able to drive herself more than the average person.
Assembling each Hurricane requires an 800-step process involving 3,600 technical drawings and 1,500 unique parts. McGill guides her workforce every step of the way.
We want phase 1 finished by the end of this week.
You look to the leader to give everybody confidence. People count on you, and if you give people confidence, they can handle what's coming.
To speed up production, McGill champions a new idea in aircraft manufacturing: modular design. Separate parts, precisely machined, allowing for quick assembly and a lighter, more agile aircraft.
The high quality of the machining of all these pieces means that they're actually the same. They're machined the same way. It's not just a custom-made one piece. It's the way we do in a space shuttle now and the way we do in aircraft now. The modular concept of making these airplanes was quite extraordinary.
McGill's new techniques pay off. The 40 Hurricanes are built and delivered to England 5 months ahead of schedule, just as the Allies' worst fears are realized. Summer 1940. Blitzkrieg, Germany's lightning war, tears across France, right to the English Channel.
When France was defeated and overrun by the Nazis in June of 1940, Britain stood alone. It didn't have the resources to survive the German onslaught.
By July, the Battle of Britain has begun. The British face a deadly rain of German bombs. Britain desperately needs more Hurricanes. It's an open order for Elsie McGill. deliver new planes as fast as you can.
It was crucial for Elsie McGill to prove she had the goods to do what needed to be done, because a nation, a world was dependent on her delivering. Talk about pressure.
McGill ramps up production. The factory's workforce swells from 239 to almost 6,000.
She knew that the hurricanes were needed, and they were needed yesterday. So at all times she knew that every hour, every minute counted.
McGill's Canadian-made hurricanes arrive in Britain at a rate of 100 a month. Most go to the RAF, but some are destined for the #1 squadron of the Royal Canadian Air Force. And an all-Canadian team of pilots readying for battle here in Croydon, England. The squadron leader is a 34-year-old from Regina, Saskatchewan, Ernie McNabb.
All right, let's give him hell, boys.
August 15th, just over a month into the Battle of Britain. McNabb boards one of Elsie McGill's Hurricanes. He is about to become the first RCAF pilot to see air combat in the Second World War. McNabb's squadron is hunting for German bombers and their fighter plane escorts. Within minutes, they're attacked by a group of Messerschmitt 109s. But their reliable, agile, and precisely engineered aircraft prove equal to the task.
It's inspiring to know that those Canadian pilots flew Canadian-built Hawker Hurricanes during the war. Our bravery and our industrial capacity together in one.
During the dogfight, McNabb receives an alert. 2 German bombers are speeding west toward London, ready to drop a deadly payload. McNabb catches up with the bombers, taking on one while his wingman tails the other. McNabb's aim is precise, and he registers his first kill of the war. It's the first of over 1,600 combat flights for #1 Squadron and Elsie McGill's Hurricanes. By the end of 1940, the British rule their own skies, with critical help from Canadian planes and pilots like Ernie McNabb. He survives the war and is awarded the Distinguished Flying Cross.
If we had not succeeded in the Battle of Britain, if we had lost the control of the skies over England, it's quite likely England would have been invaded and we might be living a very different lifestyle right now.
Throughout the war, McGill keeps her factory operating at an all-out pace, producing almost 1,500 Hurricanes in just 3 years.
The legacy of Elsie McGill is the fact that we live in a free land. I'm sure the war would have droned on much longer with more loss of life had it not been for Elsie McGill and her drive to produce the Hurricanes that she did. It was an extraordinary time for an extraordinary woman.
Elsie McGill's engineering brilliance wins her international acclaim. She is even immortalized in a comic book with her very own superhero alias, Queen of the Hurricanes. Canada's wartime contribution to the Allied arsenal is immense. 800,000 military transport vehicles, 50,000 tanks, 40,000 field, naval, and anti-aircraft guns, and 16,000 planes.
Canada was the arsenal of democracy. There was tremendous passion behind this commitment to war production in Canada.
As Germany tightens its grip on Europe, the demand for more Canadian-made planes, vehicles, weapons, and ships increases. A new labor force is on the rise. Women in the workplace across the country in numbers never seen before.
I mean, women in Canada during the war were doing everything. Things that Canadians had never thought women were appropriate for, women were suddenly doing, and doing extremely well.
From leaders like Elsie McGill to workers like Louise Christopherson. She and her co-workers will have a direct impact on the longest-running battle of World War II and the outcome of the war itself. September 1942. Louise Christopherson is one of 1.2 million women in Canada who will join the workforce so that more men can go to war.
It really was necessary that women fill in the gap that the men left behind. They needed to take on these jobs in order to ensure that the war could be won.
It was an opportunity for women to be able to work, to be able to be part of the war effort, and to develop some kind of skill set that normally they would not be able to have.
After a tough childhood in Depression-era Alberta, Christopherson moved with her family to Vancouver. Now, she is one of 14,000 workers at the Burrard Dry Dock, the biggest shipyard in the country. Our allies are counting on Canadian ships now more than ever. 3 years into a brutal fight, the Battle of the Atlantic.
The Battle of the Atlantic was the longest-running battle of the Second World War. For Canada, it went from day one and went to the last day of the war.
The Battle of the Atlantic was over moving convoys from North America to Britain to keep people fed and supplied. If those convoys didn't get to the ports in Britain, the war would have not lasted very long.
Canadian food, munitions, and soldiers had to be transported across the Atlantic to keep Britain in the war.
Hitler knows that his best chance of victory is to cut the Atlantic supply line and starve Britain into submission. His chosen method, over 1,000 attack submarines, known as U-boats. Dozens of Allied ships are going down every month.
The Merchant Marine, the Navy, suffered incredible losses. They still went out in these convoys knowing with some certainty that they were going to be attacked.
The Royal Canadian Navy scrambles to build up its fleet, expanding from 6 warships to 434. The Merchant Marine will increase from 38 vessels to 410. Canadian workers, men and women, will build them. Louise Christopherson is part of a crew that assembles the massive steel hulls of cargo and naval ships.
They understood the importance of what they were doing. They understood that this was something that could help win the war.
Part of the riveting team, she must ensure these red-hot bolts get to the riveter as quickly as possible.
The job she was doing was very dangerous. People got hurt often.
The rivet narrowly misses Christopherson's eye. But physical injury is only one of the challenges she must face in her working life. Women like Christopherson face bias from a society not used to seeing women in jobs traditionally held by men.
I can imagine that she had a lot of challenges to deal with that today women don't have to put up with and wouldn't put up with.
Undaunted, Louise continues to work long hours at the shipyard.
I'm okay.
And she becomes a mentor to many of the 1,000 young women working there.
I think that's when women came out of their shell. Because why did we have to always be secretaries or telephone operators? Now we can be whatever we damn well please.
Christopherson and her fellow workers are united in a common purpose: building up the Allied fleet. But the U-boat proves a formidable adversary, killing 4,600 Canadians in the 6-year campaign. Nearly 100 Canadian ships will be lost.
The Navy learned. They learned through terrible losses. They learned and expanded from a few thousand sailors up to 100,000. And by the end of the war, we had one of the largest navies in the world.
It's an enormous achievement, impossible without the contribution of Canadian women, like Louise Christopherson. After the war, she championed equal pay and rights for women in the workplace, until her death in 2006.
When you see Remembrance Day ceremonies where there are still World War II veterans, you will see women standing there. They were an incredible part of the thanks we should give for that generation who fought that war and won that war so we could live the lives that we live today.
As Canadian ships brave the U-boat menace, a new, mysterious German weapon poses an even greater threat. August 27, 1943. The Bay of Biscay, off the coast of France and Spain. The Battle of the Atlantic is still raging, and the Royal Canadian Navy remains on the front lines. His Majesty's Canadian ship Athabaskan is part of Operation Percussion, an Allied campaign to root out German U-boats along the French and Spanish coasts. The Athabaskan's commander is Captain George Miles, a veteran of the Royal Canadian Navy. Miles keeps his men on constant lookout for U-boats below and the Luftwaffe above.
I can't imagine what that must have been like, because there's no kind of all clear. There's no, oh, we're fine for the next 2 days. There's nothing out there. They didn't know. There was constant danger.
Overhead, they see a formation of unknown aircraft.
Looks like aircraft, 6 o'clock. Action stations! Action stations!
What Captain Miles doesn't know is that his ship has been targeted by one of the most advanced weapons of the Nazi war machine. A weapon that could sink not just his vessel, but the Allies' hopes for victory in Europe. Off the coast of Spain, on board the HMCS Athabaskan, Captain George Miles watches as a cluster of unusual aircraft streak toward his ship. They're coming in fast, banking and turning, just like German dive bombers on the attack. But they are too small to be airplanes. In 3 years of combat, Captain Miles has never seen anything like it.
Let's pull, rudder! Let's pull!
He attempts to pilot the Athabaskan out of harm's way. Four of the objects miss the ship. They hit the water and explode just like bombs. But there is a fifth on the way, and it's honing in fast.
It must have been horrifying to see a bomb coming across the sky and it's changing direction. We knew they were dealing with something very different.
The crew manages to contain the fire and seal the breach. It's a narrow escape from disaster and the beginning of a terrifying mystery. Over the next 6 months, these flying explosives wreak havoc on the Allied fleet. More than 30 ships are badly damaged or sunk. The Allies dubbed this deadly new weapon the glide bomb. It's the world's first guided missile.
It was a game changer. It looked like the Germans could knock out Allied shipping at a whim. Thousands lost their lives in ship sinkings.
Meanwhile, preparations are already well underway for D-Day. The invasion of Nazi-occupied Europe is just 4 months away.
The assault on Europe was an all-or-nothing push. I mean, the planning is unbelievable. Hundreds of thousands of soldiers in the air war, in the Navy, in the ground forces are going to be hurled against the German defenses. Allied planners thought there was about a 50-50 chance of success. Those were not good odds.
This new German weapon threatens what is already an extremely risky plan. In early 1944, the Allies get a break, a chance to crack the glide bomb's code. And it's inside this Canadian Army truck.
The Allies managed to get both halves of the technology, a transmitter in a plane that had crashed, and they recovered a glide bomb as well.
The recovered technology is shared among the Allies. The Royal Canadian Navy orders this secret intelligence to be shipped to one of the world's leading scientific organizations, Canada's National Research Council.
The National Research Council was a world leader and an innovator in radar and radio technologies. They had the ability to take science and transfer it into usable products for the military and get delivered to the field in real time.
The NRC faces a daunting mission. Reverse engineer the glide bomb, then design and build brand new technology to defeat it. Our brightest scientists are called upon to defend the nation. The team leaders are physicist W.C. Wilkinson, and 26-year-old Rhodes Scholar and radio engineer Richard Reddy.
Wilkinson and Reddy seemed to enjoy the game of solving problems and developing new devices and attacking problems even in the most difficult and dark times.
They must work fast. The war in Europe is escalating. Wilkinson and Reddy begin to get a clearer picture of how the glide bomb works and how it can be stopped. The glide bomb is launched from a plane. A bomb pilot uses a remote control to send a radio signal, picked up by a receiver built into the bomb itself, allowing him to direct the bomb right into the target.
They were hoping that they could disrupt the signals that were coming from the airplane and thus incapacitate the bombs.
For 160, it might be enough.
They had to invent something new.
They turned to a new field in the science of electronic communication, radio signal jamming.
It was a brand new technology. They were working against the clock 24 hours a day. There was a eureka moment when they realized that they had produced something that could work.
A way to make the enemy lose control of the bomb by jamming its radio control signal. They call their prototype the Canadian Naval Jammer, the CNJ. But they can't send it into battle until they are sure that it works. March 1944. In a well-guarded location outside Ottawa, the NRC team runs a field test. The fate of many troops hangs in the balance.
Gentlemen, commencing range test 1.
Glide bomb is armed and under control of the transmitter.
Gentlemen.
Stand by to send jamming signal.
They had both AM and FM and a wide range of frequencies that they used in their jammer, hoping that they could disrupt the glide bomb just enough to throw it off track.
Now.
The CNJ blocks the enemy radio signal directing the glide bomb, making it miss its target.
It's working. Yes.
The CNJ is rushed into production 8 weeks before D-Day. By April 1944, 25 jammers have been deployed on board Canadian ships.
In war, you don't know for sure whether it's going to work until the bomb's coming at your ship.
Incoming! 11 o'clock!
This new Canadian invention helps save lives. Thanks to the CNJ and other Allied technology, the accuracy rate of the German glide bombs drops below 5%. drastically reducing their threat to Canadian and Allied ships in the lead-up to D-Day.
I can say with absolute certainty that there would be many more Canadian bodies in the graveyards of Normandy if it was not for this invention.
But there's another threat to the Allies' top-secret D-Day plans. This one on land. And deep behind enemy lines. Plua, Brittany, inside Nazi-occupied France. A daring, covert mission is about to begin. And it all depends on two elite Canadian soldiers. 38-year-old Lucien Dumais of Montreal and 23-year-old Raymond Labrosse from Ottawa. Recruited and trained by the British spy agency MI9, Dumais and Labrosse have been in Nazi-occupied France since November 1943, posing as locals and working closely with the underground French resistance.
Lucien Dumais and Raymond Labrosse, they trusted each other because their lives are on the line.
Their mission, codenamed Operation Bonaparte, is to locate and rescue a group of downed Allied airmen hiding in this village. But this mission is about more than saving lives. Any airmen captured by the Germans face severe interrogation and risk revealing Allied secrets.
Bonjour tout le monde, à la Maison d'Alphonse.
What sounds like a children's rhyme on a radio broadcast is in fact coded intelligence direct from the Allied command.
There would have been a series of key words and phrases which would mean nothing to most people but everything to them.
On y va.
The mission is a go. It's tonight. January 29th, 1944, northern France. Canadian soldiers Lucien Dumais and Raymond Labrosse are deep behind enemy lines on a daring rescue mission.
Here are two young French-speaking Canadians. They had volunteered to go into enemy-occupied territory where every second they were in fear of the Gestapo coming down on them and it's the end of their lives.
The French resistance have been hiding a group of downed Allied airmen in this village. Dumais and Labrosse are to guide them across 3 kilometers to British naval boats at a nearby beach.
The coastal areas were fortified, they were mined. The Germans were not leaving any part of the coast unguarded.
Dumais and Labrosse have spent months gathering intelligence, studying the local terrain, and hiding weapons and supplies. And with the proposed D-Day invasion just 6 months away, the Allies must do whatever possible to bring these men and their secrets back from behind enemy lines.
Having those people in the hands of German intelligence would not have been a good thing. Every person was important. Every soldier, every airman. And losing any of them and their potential for intelligence was a danger.
Tonight, it's up to Dumais and Labrosse to keep these 16 American airmen and 2 British agents out of German hands. Each man is given a knife and orders to kill any German patrol quickly and silently.
You do what we say, when we say. No question.
When Labrosse and Dumais would bring the downed Allied airmen to the coast, they had to do so literally under the noses of the Germans.
They've almost made it to the rendezvous point. But the final 75 meters to the beach is a death-defying journey. The area is covered with mines. Based on intelligence from the French resistance, Dumais and Labrosse know the exact placement of every mine.
Those men, so close, tantalizingly close to getting home, everybody thinking the same thing. Are we going to be killed this close to getting home?
Being behind enemy lines must have been very, very intense, because you know that as soon as you get seen, you're either going to die or you're going to be taken prisoner. You're never 100% sure of who you can trust.
Bonaparte is ready to go.
The British have brought arms, money, and medical supplies for the French resistance. Now, it's the moment of truth.
When you talk to these veterans about how did you deal with that kind of pressure, that constant pressure, that things could happen at any moment. And they just did. They accepted more than just the possibility of death. They accepted the likelihood of death.
Tonight, all 18 Allied soldiers will make it safely back to England. For Dumais and Labrosse, their first mission is a success, but they have many more to come. With the liberation of Europe on the line, everything depends on safeguarding Allied intelligence.
Bonjour tout le monde, à la maison d'Alphonse.
Prêt à tourner? Mais bien sûr.
They had more men to save. 8 times Dumais and Labrosse organized these lifts in Operation Bonaparte. By the end of the Second World War, Dumais and Labrosse returned 135 Allied airmen to the Allied cause.
As Dumais and Labrosse continue their secret missions behind enemy lines, one of the most consequential days of the war is fast approaching. D-Day, officially known as Operation Neptune. An amphibious assault is underway on an 80-kilometer stretch of the Normandy coast. American forces will land at Utah and Omaha Beach, the British at Gold and Sword. Canada's objective, Juno Beach, where thousands of German soldiers are waiting. June 6, 1944. Over 4,000 amphibious landing craft power through the stormy seas of the English Channel. 130,000 Allied soldiers are about to land in Normandy. 14,000 are Canadian.
I think for all of those guys on those landing craft, that would have been the worst, waiting for it to begin, the approach of it. You could see it coming, you could see the shore, and you know that the Germans have considerable defenses there. That would just have been horrifying.
June 6, 1944, 8 a.m. Juno Beach. The Allied invasion of Nazi-occupied France is underway. Among the first Canadians in the battle is Brampton, Ontario's Bill Boots Betteridge, a sniper with the Queen's Own Rifles, 3rd Canadian Infantry Division. He enlisted in 1940, straight out of high school. His regiment, 800 men strong, has trained 4 years for this day.
There were from every part of Canada, miners and teachers, doctors and lawyers. They'd come together as volunteers. You know, they volunteered to go to war.
Boots and his comrades have landed at Nan White Sector. They're here to secure this section of beach, advance inland, and seize the town of Bernières-sur-Mer.
I can't imagine what it was like for those young Canadian infantrymen. Charging face first into this murderous machine gun fire. Watching their comrades torn apart around them. Finding the courage to rush forward.
We were told, don't stop, even if your best friends got wounded. Don't stop, or you're going to be laying alongside of him. Just keep going.
Now imagine how that must have felt. If it was somebody who'd went through training with, who'd held your hand in that landing ship, who'd wiped the vomit off you because you'd been seasick all the way there. And you're being told, keep moving. Don't even look down.
The only way to survive on Juno Beach was to get off Juno Beach.
But first, Boots must run a terrifying path of artillery fire, minefields, machine gun nests, and barbed wire. Boots Betteridge and his comrades break through the German line and reach the town of Bernières-sur-Mer. They have met their first objective. Of the 800 men of the Queen's Own Rifles, there are 143 casualties. 4,400 Allied soldiers are killed on the first day of the Normandy landings. Canada alone suffers over 1,000 casualties.
Many of the Canadians who survived Juno Beach, that beach of carnage and destruction, were determined to keep pushing on. They knew the job wasn't over.
The battle for the rest of Nazi-held Europe has just begun. British and American forces press east toward Germany as the 3rd Canadian Infantry fights on across northern France, Belgium, and into Holland.
They are facing the German army, which despite having been battered, is still a fierce combat formation.
The retreating Germans are desperate, and they will stop at nothing to halt the Allied advance. Obstacles, roadblocks, and explosive booby traps. Up ahead of Boot Betteridge in Western Holland is another soldier of the 3rd Canadian Infantry Division, navigating the rubble-strewn roads with his Army-issue bicycle. George Horse, a Cree soldier from Saskatchewan's Thunderchild First Nation. He's approaching the enemy line with a small team of combat engineers known as sappers.
Sappers, or combat engineers, are one of the most overlooked elements of any combat force. And amongst combat troops, they're one of the most respected. Their job is to clear the road. These guys are going forward, clearing booby traps, clearing unexploded ordnance in advance of the main body of troops coming through.
In Breskens, Holland, Allied bombing has forced the German army to withdraw, but they've left booby traps. If the sappers can't clear the mine-infested roadblock, the Allied advance will be slowed.
Let's go to work!
Horse must carefully place demolition charges, run detonation cord, and destroy the roadblock without killing himself or his men. George Horse and his team have cleared another obstacle, standing between Allied armies and ultimate victory. But out here, on the leading edge of the attack, they are never free from danger.
Artillery, incoming!
After our charge blew, a bombardment came in from the North Sea. The blast was so powerful that it knocked us out for several hours.
They take the highest rate of casualties because they have to be at the forefront at all times.
My ears were humming. I couldn't walk straight. I was never able to go back to the front, but I felt I had served my purpose alongside my friends in the military.
I think Indigenous people join the military for all different reasons, and it's different depending on what time in history you're talking about. There's a very long tradition of duty and honor within Indigenous communities, and I think that was a motivator for a lot of people. The worst thing possible can be to forget people who have served this country in wars. You can't forget what they've done for us.
Thanks to the efforts of Horse and his fellow sappers, Allied troops, including the Canadian 3rd Infantry, pursue a relentless assault on the German army across Holland. As the Nazi Empire is slowly crushed from all sides. May 8th, 1945. Less than a year after D-Day, the war in Europe, in which more than 40,000 Canadians gave their lives, is over.
The Second World War was a great turning point in our history. Canada was never the same. We fielded an enormous fighting force. 1 in 10 Canadians served. We fought around the world. The nation was forever changed at home.
Remember them. Remember their sacrifice. Not only those who are still in the ground there, but those who came home. Because not only did they fight for our country, then they came home and contributed to help making our country. And they should never be forgotten for that.
For 6 years, Canadians have shared a common purpose: stopping foreign tyranny and building a better world. Now, many will demand a better country at home, fighting for freedom on our own soil.